Today, we'll be discussing how to unlock safer and smarter communities through the power of AI. And we'll be talking about the role that AI can play in municipalities, break down the technology behind AI powered solutions, and discuss how to seamlessly integrate AI into your existing solutions without breaking your budget by having the right partners. Today, I'll be joined by Dan O'Mahony, David Rasky, and Lee J. Stewart. Before I kick us off, I am going to put a poll into the audience. So as I'm going to pass this off to our fabulous panelists to introduce themselves, if you guys can just take a look and give your insight into the poll, we will go ahead and get started. So Dan, do you want to start with introductions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kellyanne. So Dan O'Mahony, I'm our Vice President of OEM and Strategic Initiatives. Super excited to be joined by Lee J and David today for the discussion, and I'll pass it to Lee J to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Lee J. Stewart. I am the CEO of North America for Neuroo, AI software development company. A little over 30 years in IT experience, a couple different companies, and I'll turn it over to David.
Hi, everybody. David Rasky. I'm a safety and security business lead with Intel, part of our edge computing group.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. So we're going to kick off with a little bit of a general discussion that covers the opportunities and challenges that municipalities face as a whole. So to get us started, what would you guys say are the biggest challenges that municipalities such as schools and local governments face today, and how can AI help address them?
Yeah,
I can
so
go
I
ahead.
would. Oh yeah, go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Lee J.
All right. So what we see a lot in municipalities and with the K through 12 really is that, right, the security side of things. So, danger from intrusion, fire, vandalism, that type of stuff. Municipalities, we see more around traffic patterns and how can they leverage the information they already have to be proactive versus reactive. The challenges are really always budget, right? How do I get started? I've already invested a ton of money in my infrastructure and my environment. So budget's always a big concern. Budget, as you got on your slides, safety is a big topic. And then resources. How do I do it, right? How do I handle the being proactive versus just reactive to events when they come in? So those are kind of our things. Dan?
Yeah, and to build on that, so thank you, Lee J. It's, when you think of budget too, it's also what are the end results that you're hoping to get with an implementation, right? So when you're looking at, okay, what are the capabilities that we have today, and where do we want our organization or our school, et cetera, to be down the line? Working with partners like Intel, Neuroo, BCD kind of sits in the center of that ecosystem. And what's fantastic, I know we're going to touch on it today, is these types of solutions actually can overlay with your existing infrastructure. So when Lee J talks about budget constraints, which is definitely right in the current environment, top of mind for many people, it's you don't need to overhaul or completely redo what you have today. These types of solutions allow you to kind of layer on top and gain additional operational or safety efficiencies without having to rewrite the entire script.
Can you share any examples of how AI is currently being used throughout municipalities, particularly in terms of safety, resource management, or community engagement?
So optimizing traffic patterns is a big one, right, that we see with municipalities. We do see it for like fire smoke detection a bit, and we also see it for intrusion detection quite a bit as well. We have a couple scenarios where, or one example where arson was prevented as an example because they were able to determine the intrusion. And then for K through 12 in schools, we're seeing it in a variety of different ways that we didn't really expect to start off with. Of course, active shooters, a big topic in the U.S. today for trying to prevent any kind of major event from happening, but also just giving seconds, minutes, extra time to be reactionary to that in a proactive way. But we also see it for crowd movement, like, for example, when a fight breaks out in a school, we can determine the start of that because of the patterns of the individuals. We're seeing it for truancy, like leaving the school, just opening the doors, stuff like that. And then last but not least, we're seeing like for vandalism detection, right? They're doing projects, they have backhoe digs, all this type of stuff out there. They want to protect it from the general public. So we see that.
Yeah, a few more in addition to that. Totally agree with all those. On the public safety side, we're seeing growth in real-time crime centers, helping bring in all those disparate systems and feeds. Um, on top of the transportation management, you could include things like intersection safety or smart parking or even automated tolling as municipalities look to layer in more of the AI capability.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit around the emergency response too, the patterns associated with that when there's just being able to generate the best path from point A to point B, that type of thing, leveraging
Yeah.
real-time data. So yeah, good points. Thanks, David.
That's interesting. So, what would you say are the metrics that municipalities and schools should consider when evaluating the success of an AI deployment?
I would say it's dependent on again, kind of starting with what is the end goal. So if it's reducing or spreading out traffic into a building, right, you can have or see, okay, people are congregating or entering at this time. Are there ways to increase how we can get people in a building safely, securely? So to kind of answer that, Kellyanne, it would be dependent and leading with what are the outcomes that are desired, and then using these types of platforms to achieve that.
And
Yeah,
what?
I could,
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was going to say I could probably add a little bit to that. You've got and a lot of good feedback there, Dan. When you think about it from a school, right, they have or a municipality, they have all of this information they're recording anyway, right? So all this data is sitting there, and most of it is just reactionary. When they have an issue, they go back and look for something or have to go back and search for something. So identifying those types of events are like the low-hanging fruit, right? If there's events that are common and consistent, those are things that can be detected real time to be more proactive versus just the reactionary side. The other part of it is how do you put a number on safety in some cases, right? You have to because you have to have a budget in order to be able to process the invoices and everything when it comes to the technology or infrastructure. But at the same time, you're trying to just be better in how you handle safety and how you get to the event quicker. So you have to take some leaps of faith a little bit with the budget when it comes to that type of stuff. Honestly, it's hard to measure.
So we've talked a little bit about, budget and resources. When working with a municipality, what considerations should they have when planning for AI-based video analytics, whether starting a new infrastructure or adding it on top of existing?
Yeah. So the way to kind of answer that question is, and I said it a little bit ago, but start with the desired end state. And the benefit of these types of applications are whether it's greenfield and you have free reign, you can design kind of whatever you want really at this time. But in reality, a lot of these places where partners are working in, there's already an existing infrastructure. It's more of a brownfield. So what can you leverage, or what is your current infrastructure? What are the resources that can be leveraged to execute and gain operational efficiencies? Or if you do need to add a little extra in terms of partners with like Neuroo, where their software is extremely light due to how they're written on Intel, the uplift to get these kind of transformational AI applications in their current facility, in a brownfield facility, you don't need to rewrite the script and overhaul your entire infrastructure. You can get massive gains with incremental hardware and compute added into what's already there.
Yeah, I'd reiterate that again, just to emphasize it. It's your existing infrastructure, right? Take a look at whenever we walk into a location, we look at what do you have, right? What's your inventory? What's your investment levels in that infrastructure? Are you, an Intel shop? Are you CPU? Do you already have GPU? That type of stuff. So understanding your environment, number one, and the level of investment you have in that environment. And then, like Dan was saying, your end state, you have to kind of start to say, okay, here's where I'm at. Here's where I want to be. Do I want to rip and replace, or can I do it in a different path, right? Which is layering on top. That's kind of where we come in with Intel CPU and BCD on the hardware, is to say we can layer it all into the environment on top of the existing infrastructure, leveraging your existing camera system, leveraging your existing VMS, leveraging your existing compute potentially, or at least your strategy around compute that you probably spent quite a bit of money in building out that infrastructure and engineering. So, yeah.
And so while we're on the topic of, layering on top of our existing infrastructure, how would you say that AI aligns with long-term goals like scalability and operational efficiency?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a topic that's being discussed in every company across the globe. And the long-term benefits, first you look at just the rate of change of this technology and how quickly you can deploy and launch new suites, new packages, building within what you already have. So a lot of the data used today via traditional VMS, it's for reactive incident management, but the ability to leverage real-time analytics, the ability to take existing data that you have stored locally or in the cloud and actually garner insights from that, that can impact kind of across the entire organization. What your long-term goals are, they can actually be brought forward because the notion around scalability, and we were just talking about it, but the uplift to get these incremental gains when you leverage partners, like I said earlier, Intel, Neuroo, it's actually quite light to get you to that desired end state. So 5 years ago, what would have been a blowing deployment now is within the realm of a possibility of, oh, I just need to add an additional desktop and I get all of these additional analytics. So the fact that it's becoming lighter and lighter in terms of scalability, it's light years ahead of where we were if we had this conversation even 18 months ago.
Interesting. Thank you. Moving a little bit more. Oh, sorry. Do you have something to add?
I was just going to add, it's a common saying in IT, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward, right? So with this type of technology, it's a way of moving forward. If you're just standing still and you're just continue to hold and not try, then you tend to move backwards with the technology or in comparison to what the technology is that's available to you today. So leveraging this type of stuff to try, right? And you don't have to be a big federal organization to be able to afford this anymore. That's really what this comes down to, is we now can run a small box to test it out, as small as 8 different analytics running on a single camera, that type of thing. So it's not out of the realm of being able to test and be able to build off of and scale. So I think it's going to have more on the scalability a little bit later.
And yeah, and maybe a clue into some of that additional scalability for partners like Neuroo specifically. In their suite, they have 16 different types of analytics. So even if you have an immediate need for one, in terms of adding additional analytics, we're not talking about adding additional hardware to combat that problem. They have this suite that scales as your needs or wants continue to develop. And I'm sure we'll touch on that. But when Lee J was kind of talking about the scalability, that popped in my mind.
Yeah, and I think that touches on another point you mentioned earlier, is the idea to not only address safety and security use cases, but often once an organization has those deployed, there's a desire to use the similar camera views or the same feeds to do other things within operations and the rest of the organization that can now be leveraged by that same infrastructure.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Moving a little bit more into the technology side of things, there's a lot of misconceptions about whether or not you need a GPU for AI analytics, whether a CPU is sufficient. David, I'm going to kick this off to you. What are some of the common misconceptions that we hear, and how do Intel's chipsets handle AI workloads differently?
Great. Yeah. Well, I could talk about this for a long time. So I think that to start with, I think there's a common idea that everyone thinks you need a GPU to run AI, and they're often useful, but it's far from the case that you have to have GPU. And when you think about AI, we usually separate it into two big buckets. One is the training side to create the models or retrain the models, and the other is the inference side, which is how the processing actually running those models. And so for training, yes, often GPUs are needed, and in fact the billions of investments you hear about various companies making, and the large numbers of GPUs they're buying are all towards the training side. So on the inference side, there's much more flexibility. So as I said, GPUs aren't always needed. Intel has GPUs, by the way, so it's I think that we certainly want to apply the right tool or the right infrastructure for the right use case, but just to educate the market that, hey, there's one option among many for AI acceleration and inference. So a key point we want to make sure people understand, particularly for this market and these use cases, is that what we call visual AI, which would be AI performed on video streams, many other names, computer vision, among others. It includes not only the AI inference, but also media processing as part of that pipeline. And so what we call end-to-end performance and measurement is necessary. And you hear other metrics in the marketing terms like TOPS, which are these theoretical specs that I think people think can be useful, but when you look at them in this context, they are often misleading. So as part of what we do to engage with the market, we offer tools that help with this end-to-end benchmarking, both for the hardware partners and software partners. So, and at the ISC West event a few weeks ago, we launched a free package of software and tools called Metro AI Suite that will help partners do this themselves. Kellyanne, did you also want me to go into the kind of what we have on the chipset to do AI?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you think about a processor, or most people think about it as it's a CPU, but we've got both hardware. Well, on that processor, there's all these different IP blocks that do different things, little different engines. If you can think about all being on the same, what you think of CPU, what we call the package, and within those, there's multiple ways to process AI. And so, one, there's just using the CPU itself. That's typically when you've got a server for general IT workloads, or your desktop or laptop, or how you're typically using computer. Does it kind of generalized compute that can be used for all different kinds of things? It can also be used to process AI. We have, depending on the product line, we have different software-based acceleration for the CPU. Things like DL Boost or AMX are baked into different flavors of Intel CPUs. And our software packages that are found in Metro AI Suite, like OpenVINO and others, help extract all that performance. So apart from the CPU tile on that package that everyone thinks of as the CPU, there's also, in many cases, an integrated GPU. So instead of being a GPU add-in card, it's a silicon IP that's actually coming with that GPU and coming with that CPU. And depending on the type of CPU you design in, it could have a smaller one or a much bigger one. And so they provide significant AI performance. And so not everyone understands that that's available as part of most CPUs. And so we think that is a very cost-effective way to gain edge AI performance. And then lastly, on our newer Core Ultra line of products that just launched last year, I believe, we have a third IP block called an NPU that's dedicated for AI acceleration. And so that is found, again, within the purchasing that Core Ultra without an add-in card. It's there for AI acceleration. And so a whole lot of capability and possibility for AI processing at the edge that's all enabled by the software that Intel provides free to partners like Neuroo.
And a little bit earlier, we were talking about, the importance of scalability. So can you touch on how AI-based analytics can benefit from utilizing a CPU and what the overall impact that has on municipalities and how that benefits them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a few ways to think about it. Municipalities at one level really shouldn't have to care about this stuff. It's kind of how the sausage is made. And so what we're doing is enabling the ecosystem, working with hardware partners like BCD and enabling software partners like Neuroo so they can create cost-effective, scalable solutions. And whether it lands on CPU or some other combination of compute, I think we wanted to say, hey, let's enable ultimate flexibility to meet whatever optimizations you need to. So what we see is that by saying, hey, not everything has to have DGPU cards added in, that it opens up all kinds of different types of systems, form factors, lower price points, et cetera, to allow deployment for whatever constraints are. So for instance, some of what we talked about was in transportation market. Sometimes those systems have to be at the edge and are very power sensitive. And so some of the CPU only based systems are often much more power efficient. So that's one area where it's a clear benefit. But in general, it just, again, opens up all kinds of new options. So more choice, giving you more functionality and driving that lower budget impact. And so with what I described earlier, I think with that end-to-end performance, not just looking at TOPS or even measured kind of what we would call like an inference micro benchmark where it's just the inference part of the pipeline. When you measure the entire end-to-end pipeline with the media performance, that's basically the closest thing we can get to real world performance. We find that partners and end users are really surprised what you can do on CPU and with the integrated GPU or NPU, and that really opening some eyes.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. So we've dived into a little bit of the technology behind AI-based systems, and now tying that all together, I want to open this up to all of you and ask, how do your solutions make AI adoption accessible for organizations, even with limited IT resources?
Yeah, so I can, sorry, Vijay, I can, because one thing, and it was just kind of referenced by David, but I wanted to underscore it, and then Vijay, I'll pass it to you. But there was a nuanced call out about this difference between training and real-time inferencing. And at the end of the day, the inferencing that's real time, that's what you're actually getting. And those are the insights that you can derive as an organization. So in terms of the adoption and how accessible it is, I'll pass it to Vijay to touch on that. But I would think overall, it's even if you have limited resources, that should not be a barrier to entry or a constraint. But Vijay, I'll let you jump in on that.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Dan. So essentially working with Intel and working with BCD on this, we built, a gateway box, right? So you can actually try out AI and it's basically take it out of the box, give us a call, we configure it, understand your use cases, adapt it to your use cases. It's the easy button, the best way I can describe it. When you look at it like this, we take the thought out of the hardware, the software, and the processing or infrastructure component associated with Intel, right? So having us work together, we basically have built a box that you can pull out, plug in, and tie it into your video management system and existing infrastructure and start using within less than a week from a discussion to implementation, which not very many AI implementations have gone that quickly in the past. Now you see a little bit more and more coming along, but that's the whole goal of this, is to simplify, streamline it, and take some of the thought process out of it so you don't have to do the whole engineering on your architecture.
Yeah, and
That's the beauty of the partnership too.
yeah, I was just about to underscore that. It's
Oh,
the benefit is for, as Lee J's mentioning, you can call Lee J and discuss here's what I'm thinking. What can we do? And by the start of next week, you can already be recognizing that benefit because it's a light software, it's turnkey, and it arrives ready to be utilized. So you're not getting the system and then calling, configuring, testing. You're able to garner real insights as close to instant really as possible. So no, Lee J, that was a great point.
And so when it comes to building out these types of solutions, it sounds like partnership and understanding of each other's platforms is incredibly important. So what would you say the role of collaboration between hardware and software vendors plays when it comes to delivering a successful AI outcome?
Yeah, I think the reason why it's so streamlined is because in the partnership with Neuroo with Intel, all the pre-testing, validation, understanding what the resource constraints are via the software, that's all to the phrase David made earlier, that's all in the sausage making. And we do that prior to the product being launched. So you don't have to worry about the gotchas or what's the impact to, we're talking about the processing, but what's the add back impact to RAM or things like that. It's all tested and validated prior to it ships out. So the importance of the partnership is that open dialogue, understanding what the nuances are in terms of how the software interacts with the hardware, iron all of that out. So then again, to the point made before, when it arrives as prescribed, and you get to get those insights as soon as possible.
yeah, it's optimized for you, essentially, right? It's in an optimized platform to be able with the partnership. So again, you don't have to do that engineering component like Dan mentioned.
And the added benefit is, David mentioned a little ways back their Metro AI suite, but those types of programs that Intel's leading, it allows for Lee J's group to iterate, to innovate, and continue to push the boundaries of what they can offer. And again, that's all pre-validated and optimized prior to it arriving at your front door. So I would say the benefit in collaboration, it's extremely important, and that's where the value derives from, is because it's all done up front. And Intel continuously with Neuro is trying to push the boundary. What can we achieve next? How do we get there? With the notion of we can throw a lot of money at it, or how do we do it sustainably so that our partners can recognize those incremental gains?
Dan, you raised a lot of good points there, but yeah, we everyone likes to talk about performance, but as you said, what we think of as like de-risking the deployment by having this validated beforehand, and just ensuring like reliable and secure infrastructure is the other side of the coin, and just as important as extracting every last bit of top performance. I mean, they're different processes, and you can be excellent in both. It's not a trade-off, but it's important to remember that both are important to successful deployments.
Yeah. Otherwise, you lead to a lot of support calls, which helps no one.
And as we start to kind of close out the main discussion of this, I wanted to ask, what advice would you give to municipalities and schools that are just starting their AI journeys and having those discussions in terms of planning and resource gathering?
Get started. Start somewhere. Start small, scale, do something. right? Because again, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. So there's always use cases. You can go back and just look at how many times you've reviewed video to be reactive.
Lee J or David, you know, what do you have an example or a specific example where you have a successful implementation in this sector, or maybe just shedding some light on maybe a real life project where they just started and how did that work?
Yeah, I can address it from the neuro side. We started out with a K through 12 example, and they wanted to understand how they could do the active shooter gun detection type stuff, right? The security aspect of it. But through working with them, that was just one aspect of what we really could do for them, right? Because they had intrusion, vandalism. We started being able to detect vape, in the schools, stuff like that they were having problems with. We do the crowd movement components that we just wanted to try and see how that would work out to be able to detect fights before they break out. And believe it or not, they're even using people counting. As simple as that is from an AI perspective, or has been around for a while, they're using that to just understand their crowd movements coming into and out of stadiums for football games. We had no idea walking in. So there's lots of opportunities to see, and understanding your use cases are really the first step, and then identifying, hey, maybe there's more use cases we can build off of here. David, I don't
Awesome.
know if you had anything you wanted to add.
I don't have like specifics to speak to right now, but I'd be happy to share. We've got several case studies of smart city implementations with Intel and partners that would be happy to share after the call. Maybe I can route that through Kellyanne.
Perfect. So, Kellyanne, we're about to jump into the Q&A, but I saw you put out the poll. So I'll pass it back to you to kind of if you wanted to share those results or wrap up. And then, like I said, I saw there was a question in the Q&A, but I'll let you guide us from here.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. A little bit of technical difficulties on my side. So the first poll that I had put in, and I actually just put a second poll in there, so feel free to continue answering while we're taking a look at this. So the first question was, how are you currently utilizing AI and what describes your organization's current use? And just in terms of frequency. So it looks like a good chunk of people, probably 35-36% of you are in the piloting and testing phase. 23% are actively using it across deployments. 9-10% are not using it yet, but working towards it. And 25% are still in the early research and planning stages. So a really good mix. You can kind of see, the range of adoption of AI. A lot of people are still just getting their feet wet with it. And a lot of you are really actively utilizing it or looking to learn more, which is great. The question that we have active right now is, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to adopting AI? And right now, it looks like the two leading responses are limited IT infrastructure or experience, or lack of clarity on hardware requirements. Anybody on any of our panelists want to touch on how we can overcome some of those situations?
Y- Yeah, I can start. I'll start with the second question because I know we touched on it a little bit, but that's the benefit. And I think the question was, how does the software partner Neuroo, BCD, and Intel on the manufacturing hardware side, the pre-validation to ensure we know the thresholds of analytic per system so that you're not choking or not understanding what the actual requirements are. We take the guesswork out of it, if you will, and that's due to us taking in and working with Neuroo on. We bring in the software, we try to push it, we push it to failure, and then we scale out after that. So a lot of the guesswork on, wow, this software, this AI, it's fantastic. I want to use it. Then the next question is, okay, well, how do I implement it? in this type of engagement, we take the guesswork out of it, is how I would answer that question.
And I can add even more to that on how important that is, because you will see somebody like BCD here being experts in the field and actually knowing what impacts performance and where the troubles arise. They're able to do things like actually, they said, push these systems, even things like the complexity of the video scene of what's being captured. Is it one car every minute, or is it 1,000 people constantly? It greatly affects performance, and so one video stream is not always just one video stream, and so having partners that understand the complexities and challenges and can plan around those up front, like BCD and Neuroo, really help get a correctly sized system that will do what you expect it to.
I couldn't agree more. Our partnership starts off with Intel being able to validate the chipsets that we're running on to make sure that we're optimized for those chipsets as a whole, and then working with BCD to combine that with the hardware as a whole to optimize what we capture, how we process it, and how we bring it back to the video management system as a whole for alerting to those events. So, there's a lot of complexities that go into the video stream. David was touching on this a little bit, but the quality of the video, the angles, the lighting, all these things can play a part in the amount of processing that has to happen from a CPU and memories that can be very complex from video stream to video stream. So having partnerships with BCD and Intel has allowed us to say, we know we can run on these platforms and we can run well, and takes the guesswork, as Dan has mentioned. We take the guesswork out of that, right, for you when it comes to that hardware requirements and clarity.
Perfect. Thank you all. We have 2 more questions in the chat right now. So if anybody else has one, feel free to drop it in there. We still have about 15-20 minutes left. The first one is, AI gets a lot of hype. How do we cut through the marketing fluff and know what actually works in real world deployments?
Well, I have some thoughts around this. I certainly think I don't know if I agree with hype, but there's been a lot of activity, and in these kind of situations, I guess hype maybe is fair. I look at it a couple of ways. I think there are legitimate, very interesting possibilities where organizations, whether they be a corporate enterprise or a school or a municipality, are being presented with, hey, how do you become an AI-focused organization? And how do you take all your data and how do you AI enable yourself top to bottom? And that is just a gargantuan project, right? And it's hard to know where to start. And I think there is value there. But I would say the pathways are not as defined yet. This works in the exploratory phase. However, I'd say the other side, something like we'd say AI-enabled video analytics is fairly narrow and highly proven and easy to deploy and quite simple to deploy. And it's, I've been in the security industry almost 20 years prior to joining Intel. And, before AI existed, these technologies were around, but they often were considered hype and kind of disappointing performance. Certainly extremely expensive to deploy in any kind of way. And now with advances in AI over the last, I'd say 10, especially 5 years, kind of that hype has become full reality and has become less expensive to deploy over time and actually delivering on the accuracy and possibilities of what people hope for over time. And so I would say these kind of technologies and solutions are like essentially bolt on and don't disrupt your current operations at all, just enhance them and add value from day one. So it's, if you think of the AI enabling your organization as a spectrum, this is kind of the easy button version to get started, and then as you explore all the rest over time, I think those projects have to get evaluated and maybe in a different way.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Really great response, David. I'm going to add just a little bit from what we see on the software side a little bit, and that's that you've got all these different versions of AI. It comes up in every conversation, every webinar, vendor meeting that I go to, I hear AI, right? But think about it from the point of where you have either resource intensive situations, right? Or where you're trying to do something that technology may be able to do it better. Those are the easiest ways to start in my mind when I look at AI as a whole. Because when you think about video security and video analytics, it's one thing to say, yeah, I can watch it 24 hours with a panel. If I have 15 cameras, I need 2 resources, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to be real time to monitor that. Okay. And let's be honest, 2 people watching 20 cameras or 15 cameras, they're going to get video fatigue, right? They're not going to be able to catch everything. Technology doesn't sleep, right? It runs. And as long as the compute's there and as long as the systems are there, it runs. So there are definitely use cases, but we're even seeing now moving into manufacturing, right? So manufacturing has all these assembly lines that they have all these camera videos, or they want non-intrusive systems to be able to help them manage events more real time, manage their maintenance, manage quality control, those types of things. So there's tons of areas to look at, but generally where it's either human intensive is a good starting spot, or you already have just a ton of data that's like, what are we doing with this? Why do we have it? There's analytics that are there that can help you be more improved from an AI perspective, or improved from an AI perspective.
So, our next question was, what are some of the most used licenses for municipalities when you have a limited budget? Assuming that question is referring to which specific types of AI analytics are we seeing most commonly used, saying, assuming you can maybe only pick 1 or 2.
Again, every organization is a little bit different in how they use it. I go to one municipality, they have 25 cameras. I go to another, they have 350 cameras deployed. So there's simple ones as simple as garbage dumping, right? To be able to pick up when someone's doing that real time and be able to find and ticket it real time. To, hey, we want to be able to detect loitering type thing. Basically, someone lurking around an area or where they shouldn't be, or someone parked in front of a water treatment plant for a period of time, stuff like that. So it just depends on the scenario and how the municipality is using their existing video. But I would say intrusion detection is one, essentially, because it's basically, am I going into the video stream and can I alert to that for any reason, right? And we give you an example. There's a city that we work with that we've helped prevent arson just by having that set up. Okay. And the entire community, through their AI and through their other initiatives, have improved their safety records by over 25% to offer just a more safe community to their patrons and people, as an example.
Yeah, I think a couple big buckets you could divide it into are like everything transportation related, and then maybe a public safety umbrella, which would encompass some transportation. It depends how you define it, but like emergency response, even as Lee J mentioned earlier, but also supportive of law enforcement, and then other kinds of public safety that maybe are outside of that, like crowd monitoring and flow and ensuring that people as traffic, essentially, both the managing it from a logistical point of view as well as a safe point of view.
Smoke and fire, stuff like that. Yep.
Awesome. One of our last questions is, do you have any successful user case stories that you are able to share that illustrates a beneficial experience for the client?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have the arson scenario. We have a scenario where we help prevent vandalism. Thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands, I would say tens of thousands of dollars in this particular case that we were able to save the school through insurance and process